Thanks for tuning in to the Real Women Chronicles podcast. I am your international certified life coach, Tiaudra Taylor. The sole purpose of this podcast is to get you from where you are now to where you want to be. Yes, it's time to break chains and to get unstuck. Thanks again for joining in. Let's begin. Welcome. Thank you for joining in for another Real Women Chronicles podcast. I am your host, Tiaudra Taylor, certified life coach. If you are joining me for the first time, I just want to say thank you. I hope that you will find that this podcast episode today will move you and break some chains in your life. If you are joining again and you've been following on my last, six podcasts thus far, I just thank you. And I just ask that you continue to share the podcast, subscribe to the channel so that you're notified whenever I post a podcast. And I just pray that God just continues to use me. That's all I ask is that he continues to lead me on the topics each and every Wednesday, and that it will touch my listeners. So I'm not going to keep you long. I'm going to jump right into today's podcast. And the topic of today's podcast is love versus lust. Okay, many of us find ourselves hurt because we cannot determine when someone truly loves us and when they simply lust after us. So before we go into the distinctions, let me first define both terms for you. Now listen, we cannot talk about love without referring to God's definition of love. Okay, I understand you have the Webster's dictionary definition of love, but love is God. Love stems from God. Every creation that he made out of love. So what better source to refer to when it comes to love than the Holy Bible itself? So and God's definition, more importantly, but I refer to 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verses 4 through 8, where it speaks about love, and it says that love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends. So listen, it's important to understand that love is something you do and not just something you say. Okay, whenever the Bible talks about love being kind and how it's not rude and how it's not resentful, these are actions. These aren't just feelings. These are actions. So when someone truly loves you, you're going to see it in their actions. Words have very, very little to do with love other than telling the truth. That's when love and words coincide. Other than that, love is always an action. You're believing in all things that you love. You endure all things when you love. You hope in all things when you love. And I think that's what's so hard for people to realize when we are faced in situations where we're in a toxic relationship and we can't leave. And I think anybody who can truly coach you or counsel you through that situation would have to understand that when a person truly loves someone, it's easy for them to endure some of the hardest things that they've ever been faced with. Because love will give you that power, the true love that God has placed upon us. Now listen to this. Whenever I talk about love being a action word, I always want you to imagine this. Okay? Imagine how a man loves his car. He'll clean it. He'll show it off. He's got it looking good, smelling good. Why does he do these things? He does it because he loves it. And whenever a person loves something, you're going to see through their treatment. We are pre-exposed to love through God, which is why if we have a disconnection from love, it's because we have disconnected ourselves from God. And I want to stress that because If ever you feel low inside, if ever you feel a lack of love within you, it's because you have a disconnection from your Savior. It's not because Tyrone's not treating you right. That's the least of your concern. Your disconnection is because you're out of divine order. And you didn't first seek love from the Creator, who would then in turn help you to love yourself. And then in turn help you to draw close to you people who truly love you. Okay? Everything that the Bible describes when it defines what love is are things that we should not only want from others, but we should also be giving it to ourselves. We should be patient with ourselves. We should rejoice in telling truth. We should believe in ourselves and endure all things, etc. So that's what's so amazing about 1 Corinthians, because so many of us think about the external part of that love and just giving that love to others. But they forget that God has also called you to love oneself. And in loving oneself, you have to follow those same protocols. Okay? You have to be patient with your flaws. We're not going to be perfect. Okay, moving on. Let's talk about lust. The Bible also talks about lust. Okay, in 1 John chapter 2, verse 16, it states, "For everything in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life comes not from the Father, but from the world." Now, let me just say this, disclaimer. You can lust after things other than people. You can lust after money. You can lust after power. But let's be clear. In this episode, we're going to focus more on the lust for people. Okay, so back to the initial scripture. The Bible dictionary describes lust as being a strong craving or desire, often in a sexual nature. Lust will often stem from a physical attraction or an internal need to fulfill one's desires. So let me reiterate that statement because I want you to hear it. Okay? Lust stems from a physical attraction or an internal need to fulfill one's desire. So lust has nothing to do with you. Lust is not there to benefit you. Lust is only there to satisfy the person that's lusting. And this is why whenever those two terms are used interchangeable, whenever those two terms get mixed and you're unsure and you're in this gray area, it leads to heartbreak if you can't determine when somebody simply lusts after you, because they're only after their own benefit and not about yours. Okay, lust is a self-seeking satisfaction, and love is a selfless gratification. Okay, lust only worries about self, and love is selfless. So if you find that the person that you're dating or the person that you've been with, maybe even for quite some time, it's constantly worrying about his or her own needs and less about yours, light bulb needs to go on. They may be in lust and not in love with you. And unfortunately, lust expires with time. And that's why some people can disconnect from relationships and walk away like it never happened. Because eventually that physical attraction that they're lusting over, eventually they begin to get used to it. I mean, anything that you look at all the time eventually doesn't look as appealing because you're accustomed to seeing it. And I'm not saying that you are not appealing. I'm just saying you look at yourself every day and you never realize how looking at yourself every day, you fail to acknowledge all of your beautiful traits. Why? Because you see yourself every day. And that's kind of the same in relationships. Okay, it's important to understand that lust draws temporary feelings that can change over time. This is why lust is always going to be negative, because it's a feeling. And if you listen to my previous podcast, you would know that any feeling subsides. It always changes over time. Feelings are not there to stay. Okay? Lust seeks to please the desires of the flesh. But love, on the other hand, is going to please the desires of the heart. So these two terms, although I must say the feeling and the endorphins and all this feelings of natural high that you get when someone is just admiring you, and they are constantly giving you these affirmations, making you feel great about yourself. And I understand that it's a great and beautiful feeling. But if it's coming from a place of love, it will change. And that's why it's important to understand early on whether this person is just crazy about how you look and what you can do for them, or whether they truly want to know you for who you are. Okay? If you ever want to answer the question of is he or she in lust or in love, here are some signs that I want you to look for in a person. Just a few signs, like 6 signs I would say will tell you everything that you need to know when it comes to somebody lusting over you or potentially maybe even loving you. First sign I would say is, do all the conversations with that person end up sexual? If a person only lusts after you, it doesn't matter what happened in your day. It doesn't matter what's going on. That conversation that they're having with you will eventually turn sexual, because they're more concerned with fulfilling their needs. They are less concerned about what's going on in your life. Okay, that's number 1. Number 2, are they there for you after they've gotten what they wanted from you? Are they there after the sex? Or do they become aloof or distant after they've gotten what they wanted? And I know to some, you may feel like this is a no-brainer, but to others, you don't know. Because if, let's say, Paul comes over and he sleeps with you, and then he says, oh my gosh, I got to work, I'm so busy, Yeah, I mean, it could be that he's busy, but most people make time for what they want to make time for. Therefore, chances are he may just be in lust with you. And once he gets what he wants, that desire is over. He's less intrigued and he goes on about his life. And that's what leads me to the third sign. Are they intrigued by who you are or by how you look? Are they only concerned with how good you look? Hey, baby, you looking good today. Do they really want to know how you feel on the inside? Do they really want to know what you like to do and who you are and where you've been in life? That's important to know. Number 4, do you feel as though you have to give in order to get? Whenever someone loves you, they love you in a selfless way. You don't feel the need to compete or compare in that love. You feel compelled to love them wholeheartedly, just like they feel compelled to love you wholeheartedly. But if they are lusting after you, you will constantly feel this codependent need to satisfy them in order to be satisfied yourself. And it's a sad place to be. Okay. Number 5, does his or her actions towards you change over time? Again, lust begins to change because it's only a feeling. So if you notice that they're no longer calling you all the time and they're being inconsistent now and things are changing, it may not always be because there's another woman. It could be that they were only intrigued by you on a physical level and they didn't allow themselves to go any deeper, because some people are emotionally disconnected and they can't. And it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you. It just means that this person wasn't ready to love. And because this inconsistency in them is now starting to show itself and you're starting to see who they truly are, now you understand that the love may have been a facade, it may have been a game, and now they've gotten bored. And it's okay. Again, it has less to do with you and more to do with them. The only issue that you want to address within yourself is, how did I not recognize the signs of lust? Okay, lastly, trust your instinct. Do you feel loved for who you are, or do you feel loved for what you can do for a person? God has given us this instinct that we